Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of FireDEV, a fireside chat with people in the industry. Today, my guest is Dennis Quaisser. Dennis, how are you doing?
Hi, Fran. Thanks for having me. I'm pretty good. And you?
I'm good. I'm good. The weather over in the UK is leaves a little to be desired, if I'm being honest. So, if we ignore the weather, I'm doing pretty well. How's the weather where you are?
Pretty good. I live in northern Germany near Hanover. Could be a bit warmer, but yeah, I'm doing fine.
That's good. So, you're one of the co-founders of a game studio called Suspicious Games. There are a lot of questions, around Suspicious Games, what you do that I have. But first of all, what is Suspicious Game? What sort of games are you making? Do you do?
Sure. We did fantasy games for PC as our own projects, mostly prototypes, of course. And we did work for hire as well for PC and mobile, mainly because there's more money in mobile for work for hire studios. So yeah, those two things.
Okay. And the games that you were working on, have they released on any platforms?
No, no. We were a studio with no track of records at all. We were working on our first title with the help of the government funds. We can talk about that later for sure. And we kept ourselves profitable by doing contract work for other studios.
Okay. And what sort of contract work, what was he doing? Is it just like snippets of games, or was it websites, or was it anything like, what specific type of contract work was he doing? And also, as a follow up, because I know there's a lot of people that I come across that are always like, how do I get into contract work? Either, full time or part time, so they can fund, a passion like, what you're doing. Like,
Mhm.
how did you get that contract work?
Oh, that's a whole topic in itself. Okay, let's start by what we did. We were a mostly technical studio, so a lot of programmers, VFX art, stuff like that. Not so art sided. So mostly we did like back end stuff, going from single features or gameplay features up to full DLCs, for example. So we did the whole cycle or just a feature or bug fixing. That's up to the client. Yeah, we did everything, I would say, in the technical space from games, but there's only games for us as contract work.
Okay.
Um,
And
yeah.
any titles that you can, speak of that we would, hopefully recognize that you worked on?
Maybe the last thing that got public is the release of Legends of Andor. It's a famous tabletop game in Germany,
I
IP.
mean, I've heard of it. I've heard of that game.
Yeah, and there we did the DLC Heart of Ice for iOS and Android, so for App Store and Google Play Store.
Okay. And like, how is that process of, because you're not going and working as an individual for a company where you're fully integrating, you're 9 to 5, you're everything into the studio. You're getting work as a studio, aren't you? Another studio is outsourcing part of their work to you as a studio, not to you as an individual. So how is that sort of managed and maintained? And then also, how do you handle, let's say if you get X amount, and this is also another question: how many people was in the studio? And then obviously linked with that, how do you sort of manage who gets what, kind of deal?
Okay, so if I understood you correctly, we got there are multiple options how you get work as a contract studio. In the first example, this is pretty easy. So the contract giver doesn't have any dev resources themselves. In the example from Legends of Andor, this is a pretty simple one because they are only the publisher and they are looking for dev studios to do their ideas
Hmm.
or maintain their ideas. So there's no devs giving out dev work. It's publisher giving out dev work in that case. Um, yes, we were 6 people in our studio: 2 programmers, 1 artist, 1 game designer, 1 VFX artist, and myself. So I'm the only person who doesn't open the engine. So I take on contract searching, everything personal, like for every staff member. I keep their bags clean so that they can do the development work, so to speak. Um, yeah, that's like the composition of our studio. I hope I answered your
Oh
question
yeah,
correctly in that
you
case.
did. So you basically are like the manager, kind of.
Yeah,
Would that be the fair thing to say? Organizing everyone, making sure whether
right,
it's on your own game or on the
right.
like an external studio's project.
Right, right. I did mostly the closest to the project I did was product or project management,
Yeah.
like producer work in the game dev space. But as a managing director or studio director, who I like you want to call it, it's mostly paperwork and getting leads for another contracts and stuff like that. So pretty business like work, business
Mm.
development. Yes.
So that the Andor game that you mentioned, the DLC, you said you worked on the DLC, didn't you, for that one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so because you worked on the DLC and it was already an existing game, like how is that in terms of making sure? Because obviously, yeah, you might be good coders and good artists, but they've like the publisher, that or the studio, has to make sure that you make it in line with the way the other game, the core game is,
Yeah.
and other DLCs are. So how does that again, work when there's potentially multiple different teams, or not teams, let's say studios that are working on either different parts of the game or DLCs, but they're separate. They are totally separate entities that have been had the work outsourced to. So how do they keep it sort of unified and not feeling like it's made by four different studios, whereas it should be coming from the one company and it should feel like that?
Yeah. In that case, it helps that we are a big fan of the IP Andor ourselves. Like our coders got the board game in their shelves and was they were pretty excited to work on that one. So they know the IP already. So that helps for sure. But I think what helped the most was we got a single source of truth at the publisher side who knows the law pretty well. So it was a pretty tough going back and forth iteratively. So he signed off every of our ideas. Within the Andor universe, it was pretty simple because the thing you play are scenarios like missions. So you can differ from the base game in that case because a new setting was introduced. So that made it a bit easier for us. But nevertheless, there's, for example, like a new class added to the game, and you have to make sure that it doesn't feel like OP in besides the other classes already. Yeah, but the only thing you can do there is taking many iterations and getting a bit closer from time to time.
Okay. And were there ever any moments where you delivered a body of work and they came back and said, yeah, it might be good, but it doesn't feel like the way it needs to feel. It doesn't fit in.
Yeah,
Especially the gameplay, for example.
yeah, for sure. Gameplay wise, not so much because we have to work with a framework already defined by the base game. Of course, you can add one or two mechanics, but in our case, it was mission wise, like narratively wise,
Okay.
and that's totally normal. Like you like shoot like 5, 6 different ideas, and not a single one of these ideas is so perfect that you continue with it. Like you have to take one of those
Yeah.
and iterate like 5 times, and then you get somewhere where both parties are happy and you can continue. But yeah, it's you have really to work adaptive in that way. So incorporate the feedback you get from the publisher at that point. But yeah, I think we were pretty fast at that point, getting to a point where we can continue implementing. So chapeau to our game designer Joshua for sure for coming up with good ideas already. But yeah, even a good idea is worth nothing without iterating it. So yeah.
So the publisher, didn't just outsource the technical and the art side of it, they outsourced the story side of it as well. Was that common for that studio, or was it more you guys had some previous experience or expertise that they trusted? Because in my head, I would have imagined them saying, "Okay, this is what we want. This is the story. This is the missions, effectively. But can you implement it now technically?"
Yeah.
I guess kind of like a game design document with some specifics in
Yeah.
there.
In that case, it was pretty unique because the universe is predefined by the board game because there's a board game extension where we can get our first assets from, which we can alter at that point. This is pretty unique. But yeah, we did everything, I think, up until publishing, of course, from starting from ideation, going to pre-production, shooting ideas, and then implementing it. So for them, it was common because they don't do dev work themselves. But yeah, we designed the narrative, so we come up with a new mission narrative. What is cool in that regard? Maybe I should mention this. Um, it is not like implementing the board game already there. It is within the universe creating new missions and new narratives. So if you play the board game and you play the DLC on mobile, they are two separate things, even with using the same characters. So you got a reason for playing digitally if you already played the board game, and vice versa.
Okay, that makes sense, and I'm guessing there's a lot of sort of users that went over from either the board game or even the video game to the other media because they
Yeah,
enjoyed it, they loved it. You know, like the way you might have a movie, and when there's a video game come out for it,
yeah, and
you'll get a lot of users, even if it's rubbish, just because they have the fan base.
yeah. What was the most unique thing in my eyes and why it works so well is, in my perspective, the board game is a cooperative board game for, I think, up to 4 players, or hopefully I'm not wrong here. But the digital game for mobile is a single player game. So you use the same rule sets, you control 4 characters at that point instead of everyone controlling one. So that's also a point where it differs pretty much, and what it make what it made unique, I think. Yes.
Okay. And when you was doing the work for either that studio or another studio,
Mhm.
and they would come back and say, "We want this redone," or "Can you do this?" Instead, not more work, like another level or something. It was literally like, "We need this redone." How was that handled in terms of remuneration? Was it a matter of your hired per hour or per day, and if they just ask you to do more work, you just get paid more because it takes another week? Or is it a matter of where you're hired for a fixed fee to deliver a project, and if we ask you to redo a level or a mission, for example, or a narrative, that's within that? Like, how does that work? Because again, I know that's another thing that a lot of especially, let's say, freelancers
Yes.
have difficulties with, where they don't know when to charge and when they should give it included for free.
Yeah. That's a pain point for freelance, of course, and a
Yeah.
contract studio always. What we like to do is, if we are working first time with a client, we did like a test package beforehand, like predefined. Both parties know how much work is in it. A very small package for a fixed fee, and after that, we sat down again after the client saw how we work. And we communicated as much scenarios as possible, which can be quite tedious, but in the long run, it really helps. Um, for that sort stuff you mentioned a second ago, like what happens if the fifth revision or iteration is already done? How many iterations will there be on one feature, for example? How long can we take? Which party is responsible for which gate? Stuff like that. The only possibility, in my opinion, is to communicate before you're doing the work, so you can keep your credibility at that point. But it is not always easy. So yeah, even with knowing that and trying to handle every scenario beforehand, not verbally but written, like in a state of work or something like that, that's going with the contract as attachment. Um, there are still scenarios you can think of beforehand and need to adjust on the fly. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think that's a very important point that you made was, have it laid out, not obviously verbally is fine and that as well, but have it laid out in something written, whether that's email, some sort of back and forth and proper agreements made on
Yeah,
what you're saying. Contracts, again, contracts are best, but then also, having emails, things do change and sometimes an email suffices, so there's an actual proper, way of, verifying what was agreed to, because it's very easy, either one, for somebody to just simply forget, like it happened. Like if you agree that, oh, you're only going to give 5 revisions for free for the package, and after that it's going to cost £1,000 per revision, or
yeah,
the price would have to be renegotiated. The person might forget. He might think, oh no, you said unlimited, or it was 5 major ones, but anything minor is included, and it's his definition of minor and major as well. There's also that, like, see, it's also that's another important part that I find with contract and freelance work. Make sure you clearly define what you actually mean, because again, it's that thing that you might say, oh, you'll do this, and then in their head they've got something else imagined versus what you have imagined
yeah,
relative, to the budget. So yeah, make sure it is properly laid out. And then sometimes you do get the scenario where somebody is acting maliciously and they'll just outright lie that that you agreed to something,
yeah,
but because there's no proof of it, you don't really have any sort of way of sorting it out. And on top of that, I would say be prepared for, even if you have it written down. I don't know if you ever came across this, but I've had this, in my working career, especially doing contract work, where even if something's agreed and written to, it doesn't mean you'll get carried out, because a contract is literally only as good as far as you're legally willing to take it. And
yeah,
sometimes it's too costly to actually, most of the time, actually, it's too costly to act on the contract. So unless the person's scared enough, if they refuse to pay you, like I've had that issue where I've had a contract with an established, institution, they've refused to pay and they've just ghosted all my emails, and like but I had the contract, and they basically said, no, I delivered what they wanted, but because they were selling what I was delivering to them, they didn't get the sales. But
yeah,
they was like, oh, he didn't perform as well. But my agreement with them was delivery of a certain product, like a deliverable, which was delivered. Unfortunately, you didn't get the sales that you had hoped for,
yeah,
and then you either choose to change something up, not work with me again, or whatever it is. But again, they didn't pay, and there wasn't really much I could do about that. So that's another thing. Be prepared for that. And has that ever happened to you?
That's rough. Fortunately, no. There were cases in which we did the test package, a really small test package, and the client was not happy, so we departed our way. After that, that's like the baddest, in quotation marks, thing that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, but
So not ghosting or not paying or anything.
yeah.
Fortunately,
But that's like an ideal scenario of a bad scenario where
yeah,
you have either a test package, or something, you do something, they're not happy with it for whatever reason,
yeah,
and they pay you, but you don't work together again. Like that's
yes,
fine. But again, obviously, like I say, there's a scenario where they might not pay, or like they pay you, but they pay you late. Like that's another thing that people
yeah,
don't talk about when they talk about the sort of entrepreneurial contracted nomad lifestyle, is that
yes,
you might say payment within 30 days, but or I have to pay 4 months later. Like that could happen.
That's the reason why within our attachment called statement of work, I always want it signed separately with and there is like a delivery date of the payment in there. Like 14 days is the most thing we did. 30 days, okay, but everything later than that is pretty hard for game dev studio because you have monthly burn rate. In our case, for 6 people.
Yeah,
And
you got
as a
bills to
small
pay.
indie studio without a big track of records, you're living from payment to payment in the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
cases.
it's a real problem. It's different if you're a big studio and maybe you
Yeah.
have 5 games that are already live, and you're getting royalties from, like, every month you're getting some sort of money. That's totally different. But when
Yeah,
it
I
is,
mean,
you're
there
relying
there
on it.
are cases where you have a good contract or multiple contracts, and so you can build like 2 or 3 or 6 or 9 months ahead. But there will be times where you need that money to bridge like a quarter or something like that, like 4 months, where you cannot find enough contracts to pay the bill monthly. So that's totally normal, at least in our case. Yeah, but going back to the case you made earlier with bad clients, quotation marks, they are all also bad developers. So yeah, be careful about that. But I saw like a few red flags. Maybe you encountered them as well. I If anyone comes to me and says like something, hey, give me a fixed bit, and by the way, I love working with my devs in a really collaborative way, that's like the first big red flag for me. Like a fixed bit and like a collaborative iteration way of working doesn't fit together. um, Framed in another sentence, it would sound like something, hey, I want to do a fixed bit project, but we also do agile development, for example. um, so they're speaking in buzzwords but want a fixed bit and they don't actually know what they're talking about. Yeah, like these are two examples where the answer should be hell no. I don't want to do this in that way. Of course, you don't always have the luxury to decline that kind of offer. If your studio needs money, you need to take it. There are times like that, but you should at least prepare the client of the result is what they're wishing for, like paint the picture, and what you want to work with, like in the way you want to work with. Like, hey, it's totally fine if you want to do us like agile and collaborative, and you want to like two Jura fixes every week and want to be part of the process. But then a full fixed bit won't make sense in our case because that's more waterfall. If we can predefine all work that needs to be done, which is not the case, we should partly go for a, I don't know, time and materials project not to exceed, for example. That's like a contract style that's made for this. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so you mentioned earlier that you got some sort of government funding.
Mhm.
Specifically, was that, and how can somebody over in Germany get hold of that funding?
Okay. So sorry, your question was what was the funding, right?
Yeah, like what was it? Like what sort of scheme, was is it like for new companies that are less than 12 months old? Is it if you're doing a certain particular type of project? Like, how
Yeah.
basically what are the requirements to be eligible,
Yeah.
for the funding? What's it called as well, and how can somebody go about trying to get that funding?
Yeah. Okay. So there are different tiers in Germany. Like the for whole Germany, there's the German government grant for game devs, which unfortunately currently is pretty unsecure. Like there is money, but nobody knows how to apply for it currently because they did a switch in the government. Um, and there's the regional ones as well, like for every state in Germany. Um, Basically, where they differ is from the stage you're currently in with your game dev studios. In most cases, there are three different stages: ideation, so concept, prototype, and production. So they're different in that regard. Starting with concept, of course, the least money, normally going up to 20, maximum 30k euro, for a few months. Prototyping mostly going from up to 80,000. In some cases, in our case, we are very fortunate that our company resides in Bavaria, and they get new prototype funding, which you can go up to 200k, which is pretty significant. Up to 100k, it is a grant, so you don't have to pay back. Up to 200, so from 100 to 200, it is how is it called in English? You have to pay back, but with lower or without any interest.
Okay, and is that like a you have to pay back by this date, or payments
No,
every month or every year, or
I
is
don't know.
it?
If you make money with your project, if it's a flop, and you don't make any money at all, you don't have to pay the back, which
Okay,
is pretty nice.
okay,
So
so it's
you can
yeah,
take
that's nice.
risks with this for sure.
Okay,
Of course, you need to lay down and define that it's economically speaking, a pretty good thing to do. What you're going to do. So you, of course, you need to do product positioning. Where do you want to sell? How much units you think you're going to sell, and stuff like that. And it will be reviewed before you get the thumbs up for the application. That's for sure, besides the game itself. But yeah, if you're not like got two hands, it is doable to at least get prototype funding up to 100k. Um, for example, if you watched any GDC YouTube videos about how you should think at the start of a project and stuff like that, that prepares you pretty well. And of course, reading the government paper in the first place, like what are the goals of the government, why they're giving out money. You should address those points in your application as well.
okay, and with the funding,
Yeah.
is there any stipulation that they get X percentage of the company or
Um,
the project? Because let's say if you become a multi-billion-dollar company,
yeah.
do they get like an X? Like, if you become the next Google, do they own 10% of it, for example?
No, it's that's a pretty nice point. It is not like you keep 100% of your IP and the company, so no equity giving away or stuff like that. Yes, you need to mention them in the credits and wherever you mention yourself as a developer, like splash screen and stuff like that. But hey, that's like a freebie, so to speak. Yeah, so not giving away anything. Of course, there's a bit of documentation needed, like, hey, did we achieve the points we applied for, and you need to show them like the actual bank things you did, so they can see that you paid only the things you said you were paying. For example, freelancers and staff and things like that. But for getting money, that's totally worth it. That's for sure.
Okay. And what is the startup scene like in Germany? Is it pretty vibrant, a lot of startups, or is it quite small and like a very niche space?
Pretty hard to define if I only know the Germany startup scene, but I would give it a try. Um, that I think that depends on where you live. There are states in which there are not as many developers. Like the middle of Germany is pretty rough, except like near Cologne and stuff. Um, Bavaria, Berlin, yeah, Cologne, Hamburg are pretty good. So if you are living near a metropolitan center, it's pretty nice. But if you're living out in the wild, you should more rely on digital get together than any get togethers on site in your in your city. Um, what I have to say about the German game dev scene is that everyone's really humble and like to help. That's one thing I really like. Um, and one maybe the first point on what you should do if you want to found a startup for game dev in Germany. Talk to the people already know the drill and did the job. I did not encounter a single case where somebody was ghosting me or similar. I always received an answer. Of course, sometimes people are busy. That's normal. Wait a few days and you will get your answer. And they are even willing to hop spontaneously on a call and explain you the first things you should look out for. Yeah, so everyone's willing to help, and that's a really, really, really neat point.
Okay. And, you know, previous to co-founding Suspicious Games, what did
Mhm.
you do previous to that? You know, how heavy was you in the gaming industry? And is this your first startup, or have you had other ones?
This is my first startup, yes. Previously, I was studying game design in master, which I not completed. And there I get to know my two co-founders. Basically, I grabbed myself in my view, the two most awesome coders from my university. So they were studying game programming, and we did some projects together for the university and said, hey, maybe we should apply for concept funding in Bavaria and see if our ideas are any good. And if they let us through and give us the concept money, then we can start and try something up until there's no money, so to speak. So yeah, I found it out from university, which is a pretty hard thing to do, and most people don't think that's a good idea. And yes, that's not a good idea. If you have the possibility to finish games beforehand, you should do that. But I was crazy and I want to try it myself. But with reason. So we were talking about risks and stuff before we founded the company, which is pretty important, and why we like us each, why we like each other, even now that our studio is closing, because we formulated any scenario we can think of before founding the company. So, what if we got no clients? What if the government grant denies our application? What if one of the co-founders goes on vacation and never comes back without saying anything? Stuff like that. Like up to 50, 100 questions, and very stupid stuff too, but we talked about that and we wrote that down, and that's pretty important. So anything else? I was working for how is it called in English? Club hotellery. Robinson and Aldiana, it is called. Like within so I at night I danced on stage. Throughout the day I played volleyball with guests and stuff like that. So hotel clubs I worked for in my free time. That's where I get my host feeling, like towards stuff and things. I always like to know if anything's good, how can I help, even if I bring you coffee, everything's fine. I'm not the boss, it's more like servant leadership. Throwing out a buzzword there. But yeah, I got no previous work experience in game dev before I found it, which is pretty hard, but I loved it and I want to do it again. Of course, now with work experience, but not immediately now that the game dev scene is pretty tough right now. Maybe in the future.
Oh yeah, it is very tough right now. So, yeah, how, you know, what sort of conversations did you have starting your studio with your family? Because it's not just you; you've got kids, or kids now. At the time when you started, I don't know if you did, but you're married. Like you've got a family. So,
Yeah.
what were those conversations like? at the start and during, because it's all well and good when the studio's doing well and money's flowing in, but obviously that's not the reality for
Yeah.
most studios, and the reality for studio in generally, at the start it is very patchy, it is very up and down, and then on top of that you've got the probably it's probably the same for you, the obscene amount of hours as well, and that can also be you know have a negative impact on your family as well. So how did you navigate that?
Yeah. It is rough for sure because we were no startup where every co-founder can live off instant ramen for the next 6 months. That's not an option for me. So yeah, we talked. So with my co-founders, I talked beforehand, and we picked a number like how much money we want to throw in, like go to the bank, get a loan, and start the company. What would we be comfortable with, like divided by three, so everyone takes the same amount and got the same stake. Because we said like, okay, I can go with like that 5-digit number and throw it into the company and not break my existence after that if it fails, because they are programmers, so they hope they get work ASAP, and it's paid good too. Maybe not within the game dev scene, but they are got like a normal computer science background and stuff like that, so they will find work and they will get paid for it in a good way. And for myself, I picked a number which I'm comfortable with, so I'm not paying like the next 10 years back that number, and got no existence, financial existence anyway. So we that was the first point. That's for sure. At the time, I was getting my first child, so I think it was simultaneously to starting the company. And I was fortunate enough that my wife worked too. So if I were the only person working in our relationship, I couldn't have done that. That's for sure. Uh, that wouldn't be an option then. But I was fortunate enough, so I can try a bit. And so I did, and it went pretty good. So we loaned some amount of money, founded like a company with it, and the first thing we did was apply to a government grant, which with a project, and got 50% as a grant for the whole prototype money. So we doubled our money basically with that. And so that was the time where we can experiment in our prototype and build like a good background to work for contracts after that. So we got something to show up for applying to other companies, so we can help them develop features or bug fixing and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, so everyone's situation is different, and obviously there's six of you, including yourself.
Yeah.
Was there ever a scenario where, you know, because you had a family, and let's say somebody else didn't, and let's say they was able to, run off instant, ramen noodles, like you were saying,
Yeah.
that there was tension, with what to do, what work to take, and how to allocate funds. Because again, when it's you alone, as long as you can just about get by and eat, you're like, okay, for a couple of months, this is fine. But
Yeah.
whereas when you've got a family, you've got dedicated bills to pay, it's a lot harder to say no to certain things, especially if they're already accustomed to it. Like, was there ever any scenario like that? And how did you overcome that?
To be honest, no, because we articulated beforehand that we will pay ourselves at three role level of payment of payments for our positions, and we did not make a difference from co-founder to game designer. At least not a significant difference. Of course, you got more risk, but you got no money to pay you that much more. And we were always transparent with that. So we started just as a team of three co-founders, and I think it took us 1.5 years before the fourth person was coming on board. Um, so we were always transparent with what we are paying. We wrote that even down in the job postings, where we looked for additional team members, so they know exactly at minute one what they can expect from us financially wise. And we also communicated that we will do this until we hit a wall. And if we hit a wall, that's fine. You should know that. And if you're not okay with that, you shouldn't come on board with us. So that, I think, was the main reason why there were no conflicts about money. Yeah, and we survived 3.5 years with that mindset, um, for sure until now. And yeah, no, there's not enough contracts to keep us profitable, and that was one of the scenarios we articulated beforehand before the company. So hey, that's not true. We know how to handle that situation.
Okay. And that leads on to, one of the big topics of today's podcast, where Suspicious Games is at now, because that's how I came across, yourself and Suspicious Games was a post that you did on LinkedIn, a
Yeah.
very, honest post, but one that, you know, wasn't probably the happiest for you and the team. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and where Suspicious Games is now?
Yeah, I think that post went viral, like the first viral post for me. I had no traction at all beforehand. I wrote that post very emotionally, and I think everyone can read that, and that's the reason why people resonate with it. But yeah, basically, I laid out why we need to close our studio. I started it with like the grabber, I have failed. And I truly believe that. And that's not a bad thing. I know there are perspectives out there who say, hey, Dennis, you are not failing. This is the situation. It's not you. I understand that fully, but I think failure is a good thing. So that was my opener. But yeah, I laid out why we need to close our studio, and what we learned from it, and where we fucked up basically. Sorry, is it okay to swear? But
You can swear as much as you want. It's a truly open podcast.
yeah, okay. So yeah, I was giving out my perspective on why we need to close our studio, as like from the perspective of the managing director. And of course, that post ended with, "Hey, if you need like a coder or game designer or artist or anything, here are talented people who would love to work still in the gaming industry, and try to pick them up." And I am happy to give intros and connections and stuff like that. So yeah, and people went bonkers in the comment section, like from posting job boards up to just saying, "Hey, I feel you. I'm sorry for you." And yeah, it was pretty awesome. That's for sure.
Okay. And from that post, did you ever feel like, because he went viral,
Mhm.
did you ever feel like, okay, maybe we can do something to turn this around? Maybe raise some funds from VCs, angel investors. And did you try that at all previously?
um, what we weren't doing, and I don't think we will ever do, is get more bad money in, like getting a bigger loan or something like that. We didn't want that, and still don't want that, because we reached our level of money that we are willing to throw in without the company functioning like profitable every year. So that wasn't an option in the first place. Of
Okay.
course, I am not anymore, I think, but I was looking for like additional contracts from that post, and I got a few conversations after that, but nothing that would help the company significantly. Of course, maybe there's a little contract helping you for 3 weeks or similar, but that's just postponing the inevitable, I think. So yeah, I was on the lookout, but there's nothing so significant where I would be willing to go under the stress again and continuing with looking for additional contracts and stuff.
Okay. And, what lessons have you learned from starting, operating, and then ultimately shutting down your startup as well?
Uh, yeah, the last weeks or months were pretty tough. Sorry if I may. I should add to the why suspicious games didn't succeed in my perspective, and then I will talk about what I've learned over the
Yeah,
whole
you
course.
go for it.
What I have forgotten, and everybody knows this, but yeah, we were not getting enough contract work to keep us profitable because of the layoff situation worldwide. um, it's it's not good manners if you go to another studio which laid off like half of their staff yesterday and ask for contract work. That's not working. Money is expensive too currently, which is the second thing, and the game dev market is not shrinking, but it is a bit stagnant after the COVID high, which is totally normal. And the market is consolidating, which is totally normal, but people get cold feet, and that's okay. So no more projects gets canceled, layoffs in different studios. So if people need to let go of their people, they won't hire in the same breath another contractor to do work. And money is expensive currently. I think that that's a mix of reasons why it's currently pretty tough for us to get contract work, and was the reason why we closed our studio. But
Right?
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, carry on.
Okay.
You know, finish your point.
Um, Lessons I've learned. Um, hmm. Maybe I should start with w- what was good and what I would do again. Um, is like talking about risks beforehand and situations and write them down, even if you're phoning with your friends, and maybe even then more. Write down where everyone can see the statements you're going for, not just company goals, stuff like that, but scenarios in which you can see like a manual on how you will respond to certain situations. We talked about like we did a little card game. Everybody got the same card set with on one card there's like a responsibility within game dev, for example 2D game art or product management or gameplay code and stuff like that, like jobs basically on every card. And we sorted them in our own categories, starting from what I love to do. The second was what I will do and love to do until somebody comes and make it better on the team. The third one was what I will do because it is necessary up until a person joins who can do it better. And the last and fourth category was what I don't want to do ever. And the important thing we learned was not what the other want to do. The more important thing was what the other won't or don't like to do and will never do. Because if there's something to be desired, like for a small company, if nobody wants to code, how will you start a game dev company, for example? I mean, that's a pretty obvious one, but you need answers on how you will overcome the things you need for a game or even a prototype, if all co-founders can't and won't do that thing. That's for sure. And you will need to answer them even before starting development. For example, if you're applying for any grants, and you need to describe your team. Of course, you need to tell the money giver on how you will overcome certain lack of skills. That's for sure. So I would do that again. That's for sure. Networking, yeah, it is pretty important. I like doing this. There are activities that drains energy, and there are activities that give energy. for me, networking is something that gives me energy, but you need to do a hell lot of it. And the most important part, you need to do it before you need anything, like establishing relationships with potential clients, not because you need anything now, but maybe you will in the future. Like you would start, it would be starting friendships, for example. Um, so starting to look for new contacts when you're looking for contract work within the next 8 weeks is pretty impossible, for example. If you maybe going on a trade fair and you change contacts and you write from time to time, and maybe in a year you get a contract from it if everything is good. So they know you and can come back to you with knowing, hey, I know that person not because he wanted anything from me in the first place, but he do this kind of work and I need one person now doing this kind of work. Yeah, networking and do it beforehand. That's pretty important. And you need a person to do the business stuff. If like your team is a game artist, game designer, and game developer, awesome. But that doesn't answer on how you will get money. Go to your university, go to any economics room or stuff like that. Look for a person, even part time, like 1 or 2 hours a week, that helps will help you how you will do the payroll. What kind of contracts do you need? What does the company have to do with paperwork before founding? Taxes, how you will handle taxes. Yeah, you need a person who wants to do that. That's for sure, and not just, hey, our game designer does it because he don't want to do it, but he got time. That
Yeah. Or he's drew the
yeah,
short straw and he's been forced to. Yeah.
yeah, like that always leads to bad outcomes, I think. Um, it is no shame to outsource that, and you can do it even without giving away a shit ton of money, but you have to do it beforehand. Yeah. Let me think a second for any other things. Yeah, of course. This is an important one, and everybody needs to learn this themselves. But you will hear it like 1,000 times. Fun is not plannable. Never. I don't know why. I watched a panel of Guido Schmidt. He's executive assistant producer, I think, at Remedy, and he gave a talk on working adaptive versus working in a predictive way. And I don't know why, but he's he's right. In every studio wants to define a roadmap where every task is laid out, even before you having a prototype. And this won't work in every case because you can do this in production if you already have a solid base. But finding the fun within concept and prototype until you're first playable you need to work always in an adaptive way because you can't tell how much time you will need to develop something that is fun to play. You will develop a game, but that doesn't mean that it's fun at that point. That comes after that, like giving more UX a thought and make it more fluid, and that takes a shit ton of time to reach that point where you can say, "Hey, this is actually fun to play," and this shouldn't be answered by the developer itself because they're biased. Of course, they need to be the first one who plays the game, but that should be given by a person from the outside saying, hey, this is fun, I understand what I'm doing. So now you can start planning more in a predictive way instead of working adaptively, which you should do in ideation and prototyping for sure.
Okay. So when you're shutting down a studio and it's not just you and so there's six of you in total, what's that process like? You know, how how do you go about that? And again, obviously, it does sound like you had a lot of things well thought out, planned, from the start of what to do in this scenario and that scenario, and then
Mhm.
including this scenario shutting down. But was there like one, how did it go down, and how do you handle that? And two, whether was there ever a point where one or almost everyone wanted to shut it down, but then one of the co-founders was like, let's just go a little bit longer. It's just around the corner. The big break is just around the corner.
Yeah. Maybe I answer the second question at first here. Of course. um, we I mean, the main point were like we were already pretty close to closure like a year ago. Um, and what makes this so bad and feeds my imposter syndrome is I always got a great team who can do the work, and I know they can do the work. But getting contracts is my responsibility, and that was pretty tough at some points. So you're having like 3, 4, 5, 6 developers sitting and waiting to work, um, but you're not able to secure any contracts. That was pretty tough for me, and there was a point like a year ago, which we gave ourselves, okay, hey, look, team, this is the situation. We are running out of money. I will give us like 4 more weeks. If I cannot secure any significant contract in that time, we need to shut down the studio. So there was already a point in time where that nearly happened, like a year ago. So yeah, and of course, sometimes you got contracts in which some discipline is just swearing all day long. Like if you got a client who doesn't have any technical knowledge, that's why they're hiring technical knowledge. But the client, like your example you mentioned beforehand, says they wanted a fixed bit and they just want this feature developed, but it ends and mutates in like a whole game nearly. I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. Yeah, there were situations where single people on our team was like, "Hey, I can't do this anymore," and then and even before, that's my job to help them in any significant way to get the work done without burning out. That's for sure. Yeah. Sorry, your first question actually was like, yeah, the shutting down and how that works, right?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know. It's the honest answer. We articulated when we will shut down, but I don't know how to shut down a company up until now. That's for sure. Like I that's what I'm looking up every day currently. Like, hey, how I handle this situation? How I do close like bank stuff for a big quotation marks company. What we're doing with the German taxes, which are quite rigid. How do we handle that and running that down? I'm learning from day to day still, and should be. The important part there was like from day one, hey, we will shut down our studio. Please do not despair. I will help you in my best ways possible to give you intros in my network, to find you another job and stuff like that. Like that's my number one responsibility currently. Trying to learn and give contacts to anyone on my team so so they will find their future employer. um, Otherwise, the boring business stuff I'm learning from day to day, like what applications do I have to fill in to shut down a company? That's even today I'm not 100% sure, and I will see. That's my best answer.
Okay. And as the studio is in the process of shutting down,
Yeah.
what's next for Dennis and for the rest of the suspicious team? Are you? I know you've touched on it that you posted on LinkedIn. If
Mhm.
anyone's looking to hire, such and such. But have you guys spoke about maybe doing something else, either immediately or in the future? And just in general, what's next for you?
Yeah. Uh, Actually, for our team project, like we finished a prototype with funding last month, like a first playable. We are talking tomorrow about that if we want to continue that in our free time, like besides our jobs and departing our ways. So that's quite interesting. I'm eager to start another company, but not right now. I love the chaos and I thrive in it. That's for sure. Um, I want to give it another try, maybe in a few years. At least that's what I'm saying now. Um, Everybody else wants to be in the game, still be in the games industry. So the game designer wants to find another game design job, stuff like that. And I would love to find another job within like product management, business development, and the best thing would be like another managing director, similar stuff. That's always hard to find because I don't want to fund a company with my own money at that point. But would love to wear this multiple hats or work I've done up until now within another company, like studio direction stuff like that. Um, but yeah, there are not many jobs that will give this job posting out. That's for sure.
Okay.
I'm currently on lookout, so
Yeah.
that would be the short answer for a skill set I used similar in my job, like product management, managing direction, and game dev would be awesome.
Okay. And are you looking for just what, another permanent job or some contract or freelance work, or maybe starting another startup, joining another startup that's potentially funded, and you can get a salary and some
Yeah.
percentage as well.
I won't lie. I'm like the weight coming off currently, like from the responsibility of paying six people, even my co-founders, because I did all the payment stuff and it was my responsibility. So I'm really happy to get into something without fearing every day that the company will shut down. So I will trade company parts for more security in salary. I'm looking for fixed, not contract, employment. Yes. So full time employment within another company. It can be a startup, but it needs to be well funded because otherwise, I got the same problem without knowing if I have the job in a month or two, even if it's not my responsibility to keep that. But yeah, I'm looking for a bit more security right now. Of course, also because I bought a house last year and I got a family with two kids now. You know that drill. And maybe, and I hope so, I can start another company on the side in the future. I don't know when, and I will do it differently from the first one. I won't quit my job and start another company. This will start from the side until I get something playable and enjoyable, and maybe then it turns into a new company. But I will take it slowly this time, that's for sure.
Okay. What advice would you give to somebody listening for starting a company after all your experiences?
Yes. First thing and most important thing is try to find and speak to people who did this already. That you will learn the most from talking to people who already do what you want to do. Of I was there. I like I consumed YouTube in every possibility for a game dev startup. Like I watched every GDC talk on it. I watched pitching every talk there is, and try to consume everything there is in knowledge. But the most important thing people will tell you face to face or Discord or stuff like that if you ask them directly, because you can research things you know or things you know will be questions, but you people will tell you things you can't think of right now, um, which is quite important. So my number one advice is talk to people, write them a mail. You don't have to visit like game dev offices, stuff like that. Please be be aware of that. But write them an email. You can find even the normal info at or something like that, and ask for advice. We got a really humble community, and you will get your answers with a certain time. That's for sure. Otherwise, my second advice is get a person for the business related stuff. There is a topic, a GDC talk on YouTube I really enjoy, and I cannot recommend enough. It is from Jesse Shell, and it is about game dev leadership. I think the title is "You Can Do It." Go and watch that. That will help you and confront your local game dev scene. Like in Germany, you got in every state some email or person to talk to that will connect you to a initial network for get together, like playtest sessions with other indie studios or stuff like that. Try to get into the scene as humble as possible, and you will see everybody wants to help, and it's not that big of a hurdle.
Okay, and you alluded to the fact that the gaming industry and widely the tech industry as well is in pretty bad turmoil right now, especially with hiring. I mean, I did like that you mentioned the fact that it is because of that COVID rush of hiring and something that to give and stabilize. And a lot of people are quick to blame studios and companies as being greedy, even if there's truth in that. But there is also the fact that everyone was happy to get hired at probably higher salaries than they may have had a few years ago because of the huge rush and all the money flowing around. But yeah, because the state is, I mean, the industry is in the state that it is, and people are struggling to get permanent roles, contract roles. How are you navigating this time? Obviously, I know you're in the midst of it, but what are you maybe doing differently now, and what else can somebody else from your advice do differently as well to try and get some work? Because it is difficult. People are out. I'm seeing people out of work for 6+ months,
Mm.
and they're applying, and they're just not getting work.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough one, and maybe I will experience that myself in the future because I got no work currently, and I'm looking for work. That can take 4 weeks. It can take a half a year or more. I don't know yet. But yeah, what I want to say the first place is the state we're currently in is, I think, quite normal. Please, quotation marks. Um, every industry gets through like sinus curve, similar ups and downs. Of course, we are in the most deep down section yet, and we are pretty a pretty new industry. So consolidating, like companies shutting down, merging with another, that's a normal thing to do. I think we got up until last year, we got every year like 2 digits percentily wise of growth, which is pretty huge, and people got got normal to that circumstance, and now is the first time where it doesn't get as quick forward as usually, so people are panicking. But yeah, I think that's a normal situation. It is desperate and it is sad to experience, that's for sure. But it needs to happen. Otherwise, I mean, you will see. You see, projects are shutting down because money was thrown away like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, um, which are no sustainable projects. But yeah, resulting in layoffs and stuff like that. I think there, speaking for contract work and freelance, I think there is no other possibility other than personal relationships, and I truly believe that. Websites like, I don't know, Upwork, Fiverr, Freelance, and every website similar to this didn't work for us, at least. Every contract we got was from like a friend of our studio knowing someone or stuff like that. That's at least how we worked. and it always went fine. Maybe we only got people we can trust. So we got not that bad of an experience from any contract, but that needs time. So I got no shortcut for a contract or freelance work. Like, hey, I need a contract like in 4 weeks. Is there any website I can sign up and look for contract work? There are websites, but they didn't work for us. Um, I'm talking about like employmentship, um, and getting a full time job anywhere. I don't know that myself yet. I founded a company out of university. Um, and the most people who are looking for work are more experienced in looking for work than me currently. That's why I don't know how to speed up in finding a possible employer. Of course, there's stuff like, and the internet can tell you that also, how to put up a portfolio, what kind of attitude you should bring to a future employer. What does my position pay in which country and stuff like that, that you can research for yourself. There are multiple of resources online, but any other than that, I have no few easy shortcut for this. Sorry,
Okay.
that sounded pretty pessimistic. I didn't want to sound it that way.
No, no, no. I mean, I appreciate, the honesty. And have you thought about, just on a personal note, obviously this has probably been a long and tiring journey for you over the last, a few years. Have you thought about taking a break once this shuts down? Like, obviously looking for work, but taking a break, maybe a month or two off, spend time with family, re energize, and then go full swing into whatever you're doing next.
Mm, to be honest, no. I want to do that work, and I want to do it now. I'm still hungry. I want to get into managing direction, studio direction, product management in the game dev scene ASAP. Um, of course, I need to take time for my family. My youngest son is like 8 weeks, I think, old at this point. So there needs to be family time as well. But I don't want to take like a full break, like a communicated break of 2 months or 3 months or anything like that. Um, I love what I do, and I would love to get back ASAP. Um, yeah, of course. I got my list of requirements, like ticking 5 boxes within a priority for my future employer. But yeah, I think that will work.
Okay, so what are those requirements for you? I'm guessing maybe remote is one of them.
Yeah.
I feel like
Of-
for a lot of
I
people,
mean, I
it is.
mean, thing is, I like to do on-site work also. Downside is near my house there are not that many game developers, so I'm quite limited in that regard. Um,
Okay.
I mean, the first point is like salary, because I paid myself for the last 4 years like an entry role salary because yeah, it's your own company for sure. I need to step up the game there and support my family as best as I can. So the most like money is the most important thing, even if I want to do what I love. Um, Coming close to that is it should benefit my CV in a significant way in game dev. I don't want to do any work that's not bringing me forward, like sidestepping, for example. I don't want to change to a position or industry which I don't gain any wisdom, like in 2 or 3 years for game dev scene. And point three and onward, I think, is remote, um, and team points that are important for me, like the persons I'm working with.
Okay. And so it's not an option for you to say, okay, for a year or two, do some work in the web development space, not linked to games, because especially if you're not doing the coding per se, and it's more project management. I
Hmm.
find studios and companies are more willing and open to take someone from a different industry
Hmm.
versus if you're a programmer, in making mobile apps. A game
Hmm.
studio is less likely to take you unless they happen to be working on a mobile
Yeah,
application like a companion app, which is unlikely. So they
yeah,
let, and also vice versa. If you're in a gaming studio and you've been in gaming for 10 years, but then you want to go and work, start make at some sort of digital agency making websites, even
yeah.
though you're probably good enough to do it, there's a lot of pushback. So is that something that you're not open to?
Um, I'm open to it, and I think you don't have the luxury to deny that kind of thing because within the German games industry, there are not that many jobs to apply to, even especially remote. And to limit that more, the kind of work I do, like high level project product management, producer stuff, there are not many roles in that regard. So I also applied for like within the broader tech industry for product management and stuff like that. I think I don't have the luxury to nitpick that much. Um, but reason for me there is I will then try to find another job that's getting me closer to the games industry again, ASAP. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm open to that. I'm a kind of facilitator guy, so I think product management and project management are always on the lookout from within different industries. So I'm quite confident that I can transfer my skills outside of the games industry. Also, of course, I want to be in the tech industry at least. But yeah, we will see what the future brings.
Okay. And that's it for all the questions I've got on the podcast. As around work-based stuff. At the end of each episode, I always have a set of fun, rapid fire questions. Are you ready for them, Dennis?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. So the first one's an interesting one because you've actually, done it, but it'd still be interesting to hear what your opinion is. Would you rather run a 10-person company or a 1,000-person company, and why?
Sorry, the second one was the first one was 10 person, and the
Um,
second one was.
Or a 1,000-person company. So basically, something really small, just like basically enough for a team, versus something, a lot bigger where it's more. It's probably like 100 teams.
I tend to love to do the work within a bigger company more because there's more business stuff to do. um, Not a 3 person team don't need like a business person that much. So yeah, I go for the bigger team.
Okay. And would you rather have, because you're in Germany, so it's, use euros, would you rather have 5 million euros up front or 500,000 a year for the rest of your life, and why?
Mm, I think I take the second one because it's more idiot proof. I'm not that bad with money, or few as a managing director, but that you are not as risky with one investment or even with one diversing your money in like 5 baskets with one amount. So I would take the second one because it seems more secure to me.
Okay. What's your favorite board game, movie, and video game?
Oh, board game, movie, and video game. I got into that's not like it's a trading card game. It's not a board game per se, but I got into Magic the Gathering like for the last 4 months. Um,
A big
Paper.
one. I know a lot of people.
Yes,
It's
I
very
got
popular.
a pretty nice local store which I visited for the first time. Crafted myself 2 commander decks, and I love to play paper Magic. So I would take that for the board game slot. The second one, sorry, was.
Favorite movie and favorite video game?
Phew, okay, favorite movie. I think I need to go with. Lord of the Rings. Sorry, I'm just the classic nerd fantasy guy.
Trilogy in
Um,
general or a particular one?
in general, I
Okay.
mean, I'm talking about the universe as a whole. Of course, I like the original second movie, um, but like with the fight with the Urukai, that's
Yeah,
for
Two
sure one
Towers.
of my
Yeah.
favorites. But yeah, my favorite video game. Oof. I would like to switch to like the most nostalgic that got me into loving games, because the favorite video game is quite hard to answer for me. I would take Rayman 2 on PC. That
Good
was
classic.
the first game. Like I was really sick for weeks. My father bought me this, and I was like in a quarantine zone, so I don't get my illness to other people. And I played that game all day long, and that's the reason. I mean, the first game that got me into gaming, which is why I love games, is Rayman 2. Yeah.
Okay. And what video game are you looking forward to, or video games?
Oof, to be honest, my persona changed quite a bit having kids. So I'm going from I was like the immersive RPG MMORPG guy, like immerse myself for 5, 6, 7 hours straight, which is not feasible anymore. Going to round based deck building games. So you can like play 15 to 20 minutes and have a gameplay core loop done in that way. But what I really look forward to, I'm quite eager to see more about the Riot MMO, like getting back with old friends, like from World of Warcraft early days on a different MMO would be pretty nice. And I think the League of Legends universe is pretty neat for an MMORPG setting.
Okay. Uh, so so you seem to be into those style of games pretty heavily then.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, did you see the? I mean, have you watched the Ready Player One movie?
Ready Player One, yes. That's on my favorite list for sure. Anything, and I'm really like an anime guy. I really like anime for sure. And any similar setting like Sword Art Online, and anything that results like in a fantasy game or in a game setting, which I enjoy also reading, like the lit RPG genre, it is called, for books. I enjoy that heavily.
Did you? The reason I bring Ready Player One up is, did you see the announcement? I want to say yesterday of the open metaverse like battle royale for game within Ready Player One universe.
I did not, and I'm not saying like I have a bad experience with the metaverse. I'm just cautious of things released in that regard, like Web3 and metaverse and stuff like that. I'm just more like I don't have like a bad or good meaning. I'm just on the sideline and watching at that point. But I'm happy to take a look for sure in that regard. What was announced, because Ready Player One got a great universe.
Oh yeah, and I think it's primed for something.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
like
you know,
it's
it is.
basically the
Yeah.
metaverse.
And if they can pull it off the way they did in the movie, where there was loads of different franchises, you know, when you had, you had Halo, Master Chief in there. I'm trying to think who else. There was Overwatch. I remember characters were in there. There was like a whole heap of characters that were in that game on a lot of different franchises. So if they
Mhm.
could pull something like that off, that would be really. I think they are,
That
because
would
it
be neat.
seemed like a Fortnite kind of competitor, and obviously
Yeah,
Fortnite has a lot of franchises that drop characters in.
yeah. And that's exactly the point. The idea is pretty neat, and I would wish for that. But the execution is, yeah, we need to see. I prove me wrong. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope this will be an awesome game because then I will play it for sure. But yeah,
I mean, I hope we do get a Ready Player 2 movie because I really like Ready Player
oh
1
yes,
book and the Ready Player 2 book as well. I'm
yeah,
hoping we do get a movie for the second one, or even Armada, which was, I'm pretty sure they weren't linked, but they had a lot of similarities by the same writer.
yeah. I will give you a secret at this point. At the end, um, I always dreamed of building more games based on books. Um, I think that's a potential that's not done enough, because there are great universes and great books that should be playable as a video game. And I will throw a recommendation out there. If you like Ready Player One or in anime style, Sword Art Online or anything like that, try the book Dungeon Crawler Carl. It's a series. It is pretty funny. It is bonkers. It's like Hunger Games style of thing. Hunger Games meets Ready Player One in a game setting within a book. And the sidekick is a cat. I think that explains enough. You should have a look. That's an awesome book.
Okay, I'll definitely check that. Yeah, I've just googled it now. It said, is it a 6 book series? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think it's six currently. Yes,
Yes. Okay. I mean, are they still writing? Are they still like new ones
yes,
coming out then?
yeah,
Ooh,
yeah.
that's nice and interesting. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's definitely something I will take a look at. So final question, split into 2 parts.
Mhm.
Does money buy you happiness, and what does a good life mean to you?
Hmm. The first one is quite philosophical, but I would say yes, sort of. It will help with happiness. That's for sure. Of course, you're not going into the store and there's a label called happiness, and you say, "Hey, shut up and take my money." But yeah,
Big
it
companies, will make you believe that, with their
yeah,
with their adverts for stuff. It is like, you buy this thing or you buy the next, slightly shinier thing, and
yeah.
you will
I I
become a lot
I
happier.
think there's a transaction in the between from money to happiness. What it can help you with is security or education or education not anymore with the internet and YouTube and stuff. But I think you know what I mean. If you can buy food, you can buy security in general
Mm.
with it, and that things give you happiness. So not directly, but sort of.
Yeah, and you can also, try things, make mistakes, and it's not if you've got, let's not say an endless amount of money, but a significant excess of money where
Yeah,
you no longer think of it
yeah,
anymore. You can try something and be like, okay, it didn't work out,
yeah,
and it's not the end of the world. Like, you can try something for 6 to 12 months, like a business idea or
yeah,
whatever it is, and it's fine.
yeah. I think people don't need as much money as they think for happiness. That's one point. But yeah. Sorry, what was your second question?
What does a good life mean to you?
Mm. For me, a good life means to have fun. I this is so plain. I'm sorry, but what I always hated was when my parents told me, "Hey, life is not all it's not always fun, and you should also do stuff which is not fun because it's quite important." And I always thought of myself like, why should I do stuff that is not fun? Because that shouldn't be any worth to me. Of course, now having 2 kids and a family, and I know there's stuff that isn't as fun, but
You can make them fun, and you can
yeah,
try and
I,
make
I, th- I
them.
think fun is the wrong word. I think enjoyment is the right one.
Yes.
Um, so do stuff that you enjoy, and I try to pick my day and fill it with as many enjoyable tasks as possible, but they are still tasks. That's why they're called that way. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a great way to end the podcast. I want to thank you, Dennis, for coming on today, for talking about obviously your experiences and everything that you did with your studio, and now inevitably shutting it down as well, and the emotional roller coaster that you and your team went through.
Thank you very much for having me, Fran, and I wish you a great day.
Thank you, Dennis. And I want to thank everyone else for tuning in today for this week's episode of FireDEV, where we had Dennis Quaisser on the podcast. And I look forward to seeing you all in next week's episode. Bye bye.